All right, thank you. So, hello everyone, dear speaker and participants, welcome and happy Olympic Days. First, I wish you and your loved ones are doing very well on these challenging circumstances. My name is Mohamedou Mustafa Sall, and I'm the founder of CRM, a newly established Senegalese agency specializing in sports, international relations, and event management. I'm also the initiator of Africa Talk Sports. And in today's series, we will discuss COVID-19 and its challenges, solution, and the opportunity on the road on the road to Tokyo. So some of you may also be familiar with Africa Talk Sports, but as we are welcoming some new audience members, I would like to quickly touch on the missions and objective. Africa Talk Sports is designed to bring together and create a dialogue across the Africa sports world on how we can tackle opportunities and the major challenges that our sport movement is facing, not only during the COVID-19, but on an ongoing basis. In today's session, our goal is to assist in unifying the National Olympic Committees and Paralympic Committees in Africa by celebrating our achievement and resilience in the face of a global pandemic. We therefore consider the hosting of this web conference series as a way for us to celebrate this special day while living through this difficult time. By contributing to the story of the Olympic and Paralympic movement, we hope to bring you some of the communal feeling and collective joy that the worldwide Olympic Days provides. Finally, I would like to thank all of the speakers and participants again for making themselves available to share their experience with us today on this panel, and a very special thank to our great moderator, Jan Craven. So without ado, I will hand it over to Jan so the panel can start. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafa. As you said, I mean, it's great to have so many people from the world of Olympic and Paralympic sport in Africa unite together using the modern technology that we have at our disposal nowadays. And I think that, you know, what we would like to use this session, as we've just done by completing a similar session with the French speakers of Africa, is really just to from each of the speakers present here today, is to obviously to get their opinions, their views, obviously, and their recommendations in terms of the ongoing pandemic and how we can work together, continue the dialogue together to find common solutions to what are obviously common problems, not just in Africa, but obviously worldwide at the moment. And obviously we've got like I said, we have a great panel, and I just want to do a quick introduction for all those people that are joining us around the world. First of all, I would like to obviously welcome IPC President, Mr. Andrew Parsons. Obviously goes without saying, and the leader of the Paralympic movement worldwide. And thank you for being with us today. I know a little bit about how busy your schedule can be. So we're very appreciative for you to find some time to be with us today. Dr. Hayat Khattab, who's the president of the Egyptian National Paralympic Committee, and also president of the Paravolleyball in Africa as well. So welcome and thank you very much. Rodrigo Bejarano, NPC president for Cape Verde, and also the Secretary General of the African Paralympic Committee. We have Ezra Shabangu, who's now the ANOCA Technical Director, so that's the Association of National Olympic Committees of Africa, so to obviously give her point of view on ANOCA, and also the former General Manager, obviously, of high performance for the South African Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And then we have Leon from the South African Olympic and Paralympic Committee, as well as the General Manager, get my words out, General Manager for High Performance, and also a Vice President of the African Paralympic Committee as well. We have Hazel, one of the great leaders, female leaders of African sport, coming from Zambia. Thank you. Also the Vice President now of the former Secretary General, should I say, and now Vice President of the Zambian Olympic Committee. We have Emmanuel joining us from Nigeria, from the Nigerian Olympic Committee. So welcome, Emmanuel. I think we also have Mr. Samson Dean coming from meeting us from Ghana, president of the NPC there. So what we have is a great collection of leaders from the Olympic and Paralympic world. I think that can really give us their important insight into the topic of discussion today. Without further ado, I'd like to pass over the microphone, or should we say the virtual microphone, to IPC President Andrew Parsons to give us a brief introduction into today's session. Thank you, Andrew.
These are the challenges of technology. We first need to unmute our microphones before speaking. So good morning, at least in Brazil. We're still in the morning, but since we are talking about Africa, good afternoon to all of you in this call, or whoever is watching us through Facebook. I think it's a pleasure to be here. As you know, Africa is an important region of the Paralympic movement. It is a priority for us, and it is a priority because, frankly, I don't think the IPC has done enough throughout the years, most probably because the IPC could not do enough for Africa, and because I think we have new players in the region who now can help the International Paralympic Committee to support our national members in the different countries in Africa. It's a challenging region, but of course the untapped potential in Africa is something that is probably one of the biggest assets that we have in the Paralympic movement these days. I know there's so much to do, and we believe that we are doing a few strides. We are developing, but there's way more to be done. I would like to start by the theme of the COVID-19 crisis and give you a little bit of perspective on the decision and the postponement. I see our good friends from Tokyo here, and I'll talk about a little bit how the postponement of the games. First of all, one fear I have is that when the return to play, as people are referring to, can highlight some inequalities around the world. We are already seeing some leagues starting to have some games, some matches. For example, we have the Premier League, we have the German Football League, the Bundesliga, UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But these are leagues who have enough resources to have a robust testing program, and then what to do after the testing. So in terms of isolating positive cases, what to do. So normally this is not the reality of most, if not all, of our members at the International Paralympic Committee, and is not the reality of the organizers of our events at the Paralympic movement. So I believe that return to play will be very disproportionate in different parts of the world, but also when it comes to different sports and different leagues inside the sports. We have, for example, different situations like in the UFC, the mixed martial arts biggest event in the world. A few weeks ago, they have identified one of the fighters as a positive COVID-19 case, and immediately they had all the protocols in place, but also the resources to put those protocols to action and isolate the fighter, isolate his staff, and now everything is under control. But again, that's not the reality that we will probably see in the Paralympic movement. When it comes to Tokyo and when it comes to the postponement of the games, we believe that many people are saying that we need the vaccine to have the games. We are not, let's say, only focusing on the vaccine. We believe it's the contamination, it's the pandemic being under control. And of course, the vaccine is, let's say, the ultimate resource to that. Is the most important one, most effective one. But of course, depending on how the consequences of some of the measures such as lockdowns, quarantines, and the way the national governments are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic in different parts of the world, the results of these efforts will let's say, the consequences of it. Of course, the vaccine will make everything less difficult, but we are not only, let's say, the games will not only go ahead if we had a vaccine, but the virus needs to be under control. For sure, we are liaising also with the World Health Organization, with the IOC, with Tokyo2020 organizing committee. So we are liaising with the different task forces that were formed after the postponement of the games, and with World Health Organization as well, and some other human rights groups. And what is clear to us is that we will have some waves. So, as you are seeing now, for example, in Europe, that they are lifting some of the restrictions in some countries, and then they are more flexible, then they have to impose some restrictions again. So these waves of coming and going, it will be a reality in every single country. That's what at least science is indicating at the moment. We believe that in Japan will be the same, but it's not only about Japan, it's about every single country in the world that will send athletes, representatives to the games. The games were postponed due to the fact that, of course, we could not offer a safe environment to the people attending the games, not only athletes, but spectators, technical staff, broadcasters, media. As you know, it was impossible to guarantee the safety and the health of everyone involved. Remember that that was announced in phases, that we had first the IOC and the IPC announcing a 4-week study. Then on 24th of March, the games were, and now it was announced that games were postponed. And then in the 30th of March, the dates were announced. And some people might think, well, it took so long for that announcement, but the Paralympic Games and the Olympic Games are the most, let's say, complicated event in the world to deliver. We are talking about hundreds of organizations involved. We are talking about thousands of suppliers involved. So, for example, what we are doing now with the IOC, it's starting with the basics, so guaranteeing the venues, so the sport venues and the non-sportive venues. For example, the Village, it's a challenge. The International Broadcasting Center, the main press center, they are all in a big convention center called Big Side. So we already had some other events scheduled for those venues in 2021. And so how to deal with that in the same sense, how to deal with the accommodation. You have for the Olympics 40,000 hotel rooms contracted. How you deal with that? The hoteliers, they don't want to lose money. So it's just not a matter of changing the reservations from 2020 to 2021. So it's one of the most complex events in the world, if not the most complex event in the world. So to address all these issues, it takes some time. That's why it took some time to make the decision. As it was already said in the media, to cancel the Paralympic Games, we could have canceled it on our own. The IPC could have canceled the games, but to postpone, we needed the IOC and we needed the Tokyo2020 organizing committee. So that's why it took a little bit longer than people would expect. And we are working from an IPC perspective in 4 streams. The first one is with Tokyo2020 and the IOC in the games. So what will be the games that we'll have next year? Many people are talking about the downscaling of the games to make games more rational from a budget and from a spending point of view. And of course, sport cannot be in isolation. We are all disconnected from the world. Everyone will have to our downscaling operations, trying to save money in all the different areas, and so the games will not be different. So we are in this effort with Tokyo2020 and with the IOC. So what will be the games that we will have next year if we can go ahead with the games from a, let's say, COVID-19 perspective? So the IOC, we are working in this stream. The second one is, of course, about how can we support our members, and in supporting our members, support our athletes. So we will announce something in the next few weeks in how we will support our members. And when we say support, is survival. So how can our members survive 2020, 2021, and 2022? So how can we guarantee that some of our members, they can have the minimal operations until we get to the games next year? And of course, so how can we then support the athletes? And we know that are different all over the world. For example, and in this case, some of the most sophisticated national Paralympic committees, they probably are also being hit very hard because they're losing different revenue streams, while the smaller NPCs, they only rely on government funding. In this case, in some cases, they are, let's say, in a safer situation compared to those who depend on commercial revenues and fundraising activities. The third stream is, of course, our own staff, our own workforce in Bonn. We have more than 30 nationalities at the office. Many of them are on their own in a foreign country, worried about the people, their families at home. So how we can support them? How can we offer let's say the structure and keep an eye on their mental health, because they need to face this challenge and at the same time deliver the services that our membership expect and they need in this unprecedented time. So they have more to do in a challenging environment, and it's still fighting the COVID-19 in a foreign country. Of course, not all of them are foreign. We have many Germans in the team, but it's an important stream. And the fourth one is cash flow. How can we, IPC, survive financially to this crisis? I am happy to say, and we have many representatives and presidents here of our own members. So rest assured, we are stable for 2020. We cut an extra 5% of our budget, but we had some commercial partners and some broadcasters who said, look, if our payments are connected to Tokyo 2020, if Tokyo 2020 is postponed, we want to postpone the payments for next year. So we need to balance that. Some of the payments that we were going to make were also postponed for next year. So we were able to balance the cash flow. 2021 is a different thing. It's a different, it's where our agreement with the IOC kicks in the commercial aspect of it. So it will be a different, let's say, revenue structure for the IPC. So remember, we spoke who is from the Paralympic movement. We already spoke in our last General Assembly that we will face some challenges, but we have our reserves exactly for that. So we believe that if for 2020-2021 period we will survive, let's say financially we are stable. But of course, this is in a scenario where the games do take place. In a scenario where the games don't take place, we know that the whole of the Olympic movement will suffer a lot, and the Paralympic movement will suffer a lot. But we remain optimistic that we will have the games next year. I think I spoke a lot. I will stop now, and maybe when you have questions more specifically about Africa, because I think it's what we're here to talk about. But I think it was important to give you, let's say, a perspective on the COVID-19 when it comes to the games and when it comes to the IPC as an organization.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I think that's a lot of information, very, very useful, I think, for a lot of the members. I mean, one of the things that I think the resources available to the NPCs and obviously NOCs as well. But and obviously the question to you specifically about the NPCs. I mean, what resources are there available to NPCs, maybe via the IPC website related to COVID-19? Or, I mean, and I know a lot of sports are not yet in a position to communicate the qualification pathways or the rearranged qualification pathways, classification opportunities as well. So, I mean, what would your advice be, or what resources are there available, do you think, to the members there in terms of information available to guide them in their decisions?
Well, I think it's absolutely fundamental that they are connected with IPC headquarters. We have the people on the membership engagement department. Of course, in everything that is published in our website, all the communications coming from the IPC, social media and everything, because communication is key in this moment. That uncertainty is the word that defines the moment we are living. So we don't know when we will have competition. So to say that we have any idea on when and where classification opportunities will be offered to athletes will be a lie, because we don't. At the moment, still in the Paralympic movement, classification opportunities are linked with competitions. So, which is something we may change in the future. Who knows? But we are working on that. But at the moment, it's how it is. And if we don't have if we don't know when we will have competitions, if it's in January next year, if it's in March next year, if it's in May next year, or if it is in December next year only, then of course it's a scenario where we will not have the games. But we don't know exactly when we can offer classification opportunities. But we are working with the international federations and with the World Para Sports, which is our department who run the IPC sports, in in having the protocols for the return to play. But again, this depends a lot on the situation of COVID-19 worldwide. You know, again, there's not a single country in the world that we can say, look, we can organize a national event there. And at the end of the day, we need international athletes to compete because we need to offer qualification opportunities and classification opportunities. So I would say our resources website, but it's always important to be in contact with them, with the respective continental manager that we have in the membership engagement team. And in a few weeks, we'll be announcing some other resources to the nations, to the members, not only nations, but IFs maybe as well, because some of the funding that we have towards development, we understand that it's impossible to implement any development activity under the current scenario. So we will not implement training camps, workshops, well, virtual ones, but I mean, that you have physical contact, you know, between coaches, between athletes, we will not have it. So we will change the destination of that funding to exactly to support our members in need and to allow them to survive through this crisis. And survive is really the word here. It's not to go to that level. It's just to maintain the operations, address issues like cash flow and any infrastructure problems due to the COVID-19 crisis.
Excellent. And I think the point you mentioned there, I think, is absolutely spot on. I mean, we're in uncertain times. The information is not there yet, or even if the information is there, it may well change. And I think that one of the key messages for all participants here is, especially, and it's something that we'll bring in Tokyo 2020 to talk about as well, is to remain in contact with the various institutions, whether it be the IPC, the IOC, the sports federations, the event organizers like Tokyo 2020, to really be there and be connected with them, so that when that information is available, then they're not missing out on that. I mean, I know from my experience, you know, working for the organizing committees of London, of Rio, that communication in Africa can be difficult. There are challenges that, you know, in terms of, you know, in some kinds of infrastructure. I mean, it took me a while to learn. Why am I not able to speak to somebody? Well, the power's been off for a few days. And I mean, now living in Brazil, I also understand that well myself in certain areas. But I think it's, you know, I think critical that we remain in contact, that we use these new means of technology to communicate with each other. And like I said at the start, to share ideas about how we can overcome the common challenges that we have. So, well, thanks a lot again, Andrew, for obviously for that input. I mean, what I'd like to do is Dr. Hayat, can you hear me right now? Can you unmute? Yep. Dr. Hayat, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Great. I just wanted to come to you first. Obviously, a very successful National Paralympic Committee in Egypt. And so, can you tell us a bit about what is the situation in Egypt right now, and what are you doing, or what is the NPC doing to support your athletes and your community during this time?
Well, the situation now is with us that the government has allowed to start smoothly, starting from the 1st of July. So what I'm gonna do, as Mr. President was saying, I have to take care and categorize the different sports in the NPC. So what we're gonna do, the sports that do not allow for physical contact with the players, with each other, this is what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the athletics, of course. We're going to start with the powerlifting. Regarding swimming, we have to be very careful, because it was mentioned that the swimming pools are not very safe, and that the amount of chlorine that is put in the water should be controlled. So regarding this, we are going to delay a little bit the swimming. But what I want to say, that in my strategy, I am relying on 3 points that we're relying on. First of all, on the players, and of course, all the surrounding around the players, which means that we have to take care of the coaches, athletics, the team physicians, these ones have a special treatment. Then with the facility itself, we have to be sure that the facility is well sterilized. We have to be sure that the people taking care of the facilities are in good health. We have to be sure that the restrooms and the areas where the players have to change are also in a good state. And we have to take care of the operational people that are running the whole system. So in this courses to the players, telling them the importance of having social distance. Some of our players, we do put them in long-term training camps. So in this, we have to be sure that the place where they're going to be lodged is well fertilized. We have to be sure that whatever is presenting to them is in good shape. So of course, to do this, we are planning to have periodical meetings, every maybe 10 or 15 days to follow up. Most important is that we are allocating or we are appointing a physician with his team to be 24 hours ready for our players. Before they enter, we have to check the fever, we have to take a swab, we have to be sure that they are in good health. What if one of my players during the session or during the player, we are doubting that he has corona? We're gonna have a special isolation room, which will be supervised by the medical committee with in also contact with the medical committee that was formed by the Olympic committee. So I think this is how we are planning to do. We will start smoothly. We will start with the sports that doesn't need physical interaction. Then we will make our precaution before entrance, and then we will follow them up every 15 days periodically. Does this satisfy your answer, or you want anything else?
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think it's good to, it's good to, well, on a few points really. I think it's good to see that there seems to be, obviously a lot of thought and planning which is necessary really to go in ahead of the reopening of any facilities or any sporting
I have
competitions.
to mention something important. Of course, coming to the financial constraint, we are trying as much as we can to find resources that would help us to proceed. For the time being, we can manage, but I'm talking on the long term. For the time being, we can manage. My budget can support my plan. But later on, if ever I have any failure in connecting, we will start to sponsor, and I'm sure the government will help us because this is a worldwide crisis.
Exactly, absolutely. Well, thank you again for your input. That was excellent. And just I want to bring in Ezra from obviously the technical director for ANOCA. Obviously ANOCA representing the National Olympic Committees of Africa. I mean, Ezra, how are you? What is ANOCA doing currently, or what actions is ANOCA taking to help the National Olympic Committees, Olympic athletes of Africa currently?
Good afternoon, Jan. Good afternoon to all the participants and people watching from home and all over the world. Basically, as ANOCA, what we have done is to obviously follow the IOC guidelines, but we are engaging with the National Olympic Committees in terms of what is happening at a country level, because it is important, as Andrew indicated earlier, that it's going to be different for each country as different countries open, and it will be the different phases and the different stages. So what we have done is, in terms of the adjustment of our programs, we've also extended our support. We've got an athlete support program, which we started last year, where we're paying about $1,000 per month to top level athletes to support them to prepare for Tokyo. So we've extended that all the way to July 2021, so that then athletes are still able to prepare. Over and above that, what we have been doing is with the Continental Activities Grant, which is around $100,000 US dollars per year to the NOCs. NOCs have been coming back to indicate that given the situation of COVID-19 and the postponement of the games, it has affected their programs. So can they utilize that money to actually support athletes in other ways in terms of coping with COVID-19? Others want to buy equipment. So what we have done as ANOCA is we've been flexible in that regard to actually, on a case-by-case basis, view those requests and allow the NOCs to be able to do that modification of their plans. And recently, as you may be aware, ANOC, which is the Association of National Olympic Committees, has actually given some funding to the 5 continental associations throughout the world. And ANOCA, we've received about $3.1 million US dollars, which we are going to actually distribute to the NOCs. However, the NOCs will have to give us their plans in terms of how they're adjusting. And we've grouped that in terms of considering that there needs to be athlete support, so that will continue. And also in terms of the NOCs management, because we are aware that, I mean, most of the NOCs have actually suffered in terms of their budgets that they were managing to end this year in terms of the games, but now they have to extend that by year. So they will have an opportunity to apply for that. And then, I mean, as Africa, all of you are aware, in some parts of the world where we've got refugee athletes, refugee teams, which are supported by the IOC, we are also considering that as ANOCA, and also we've got the Olympic Africa centers, which are throughout the continent. So we will be putting some funding to the programs at Olympic Africa centers. And some of the Olympic Africa centers have actually, like in Mozambique, they started creating masks as part of their program in terms of integrating with the community and providing those face masks to the community of Bowane. And throughout the continent, most NOCs are actually also using the continental grant to assist the communities beyond the athletes. So we will be looking at that.
Excellent. No, and I think we had, obviously in the previous session that we had for the French speakers, we had obviously the ANOCA president, Mr. Baraf. I think he was mentioning as well, again, the continuing dialogue and hosting, you know, various sessions, online sessions with the various members. And I think that, you know, keeping people connected during this time and making them aware of the resources that are available to them and or processes that they need to follow to be able to, like you said, to use funds for purposes for which they were not initially intended, I think, you know, and I guess flexibility there, you know, in terms of how an NOC can use what's available to them to as Andrew said, to survive really at this stage. And I think it's just another one of those areas where we need to continue to remind everybody to you know, to continue and to promote that communication and look for opportunities, I think, also to cooperate where possible. And so what I mean, this is a topic that I think would be great to speak to Rodrigo about. So Rodrigo, if you can hear me now. The reason why I think I wanted just to bring you into this conversation, Rodrigo, is because having lived myself in Cape Verde for nearly 2 years, you know, what always impressed me a lot, I think, is the cooperation that exists between the National Paralympic Committee and the National Olympic Committee. And I think we had obviously Philomena, the Fortes, the president of the NOC, talking about how it is viewed as one team, Team Cape Verde, you know. And I think how do you feel that the close collaboration between the NOC and NPC helps you in Cape Verde?
Hello, thank you, Jan. It's greeting from Cape Verde. Yes, this is a very good question because this is a very special time. This is a special crisis. We must to be united. We must to be together in this moment. The collaboration with the National Olympic Committee in this moment is the best. We have a very good history together. We work together for a long time. Even the president of the Olympic Committee is Philomena. She is part of the founder of the Paralympic Committee. So the idea around the world is to continue work together. So in this moment, this crisis gives us the opportunity to improve this relationship. I believe around the world we have that challenge, especially in Africa, where we know by our experience that unfortunately the relationship between MOC and MPC are not the best. And this is a good moment to learn each other. Let me tell you and everyone that if there is any institution or athlete who are really everyday challenge the adaptation, this is the Paralympic movement. The Paralympic movement has everyday challenge. So this is not new for us, I mean for the Paralympic movement, but this is one more time we will show that we can do together. We can do that. Even the challenge to organize the first African Paralympic game, we did everything. Even our friend from Morocco, the International Paralympic Committee, IPC, the president is here, and he knows how we try to manage all this situation. There was a challenge, and will be a challenge to organize the first one. This is a dream. Yes, this is a dream. Everything is for the sport. As we know, sport is the tool, the great tool to go forward. This is a tool for the unity, for the humanity to feel including in the society. It's not just a sport to who win the medals. This is a very special moment. This is a very special moment for the both movement, Olympic and Paralympic, and especially in Africa. We know and we learn a lot about, for instance, they have only one umbrella for the sport. This is very good example. We will implement that in Cape Verde for sure. As said today, Filomena, the president of the Olympic Committee of Cape Verde, we are very proud to say that we have a very good relationship. We are like a family. And this way, we think we starting now with this crisis, starting now, and our athletes deserve the best of our institution. I mean the Olympic and Paralympic. The challenge we know, I repeat, if there is athletes or movement who really knows what is adaptation, this is the Paralympic movement. We have big challenge now, we had challenges before, and we will have challenges in the future. So anyway, we are ready to collaborate. We are very happy with the engagement of the people to talk now. Talk Olympic and Paralympic in the same platform. This is very good initiative. I would like to say thank you for the organization, especially to my friend Mustafa and Jan, who are always involved in that. We must to have the participation of the French people, English speaker, everybody who can share the experience they have in this moment and the experience they have absolutely in sport. We have, and we will unite the Olympic and Paralympic movement in Cape Verde. We hope there will be an example for everybody, especially the sensitivity, the humanity of the responsible of the Olympic and Paralympic movement at local level. So at national level, we must be together. We must work for the same objective, and this is the best opportunity. Jan knows that we work hard to organize, for instance, the first beach African game. So we were included. The Paralympic movement was involved. So this is one of the samples that we can do together. That is our position.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for that. I mean, I think, another great example, obviously, in terms of working together, probably even more closely, I think, is probably looking at, looking to speak to Leon now in terms of the, obviously, the South African Olympic and Paralympic Committee is one organization that manages obviously all of the sport. And I think that, Leon, I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, obviously you work as one on a daily basis. Is that not right?
Correct. Yeah, we've been working as one for the last 15 years. Sorry, just hello everybody. Hello everyone that's watching, and I have to obviously say hello to my president, Andrew Parsons. Otherwise, I know it will happen the next time I see him. But yeah, we've been working as one for a number of years. Made some mistakes along the way, and we've learned from those mistakes to a point where we're also setting up a Paralympic division within our fraternity to make sure that we don't drop the ball on para. We really want to develop and push para sport towards 2024. We're very strong in certain sport, and we want to spread that along in the other sport as well, with working together with the able-bodied national federations. But yeah, it works well. We treat our athletes all the same. Our athletes get the same funding. Our athletes get the same rewards when they get medals as well since London 2012. So it's been great, and it's working well now.
Yes, I mean, I think it's an incredible template, you know, to follow, and I think, you know, again, it's one that maybe, you know, we should try and see whether it can be replicated, you know, in everywhere else. I mean, obviously your day job, though, obviously, you know, as being the sort of general manager for high performance. I mean, South Africa's had what everybody says probably one of the hardest lockdowns, you know, in terms of the restrictions that have been in place. I mean, how does your day-to-day in terms of, you know, monitoring and tracking the athletes and their performance, their needs, how are you adapting in this, I guess, in this situation?
Yeah, so from the 27th of March, we've been in hard lockdown. So up until now, the athletes haven't been able to train in a formal way. They're allowed to train at home, and they're allowed to exercise outside based on government regulations. As soon as this happened, SASCOC set up a war room made up of national federations, and myself from High Performance with our medical and our chief operations officer to try help. Remember, we're not just Olympic and Paralympic, we're also a confederation. So we have 85 members that we've got to look after. So we've really tried to help and push government. Our big thing is return to training as more than return to play. There are some sports that need to return to play in order to get revenue in. Football, rugby, cricket, in the top three there. So on last week, the minister announced that we can return to training and play only, but for contact sport, they can only return to training. However, there are strict government guidelines that we have to adhere to in order to do that. And as the president said earlier, some federations have the resources, most federations don't have the resources. Everybody has to get tested. You have to have a compliance officer. You have to have a thermometer. You got to deep clean the stadium regularly. When you got soccer that has all the money and rugby and cricket, that's not too difficult. But when you have a smaller sport like a karate or a basketball that's really struggling for funding, it's going to be a challenge. And we're trying to engage with the ministry to try help. The ministry has helped. They've set aside money that our athletes have benefited from already. So they were able to claim from March till June money, and that money's been paid to everybody that was successful. And depending on how long the lockdown goes on, I'm sure that funding will open up again. It's not great, but as the president also said before, it's to help people survive. We're not helping people buy houses or buy cars. We're trying to help people eat. But our biggest thing as an Olympic and Paralympic committee, based on the games being next year, every day that the athlete's not in training is a detriment to their possible performance next year. And we're trying to really push them to get back into training.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess it's not easy for anybody at this time, is it? You know, I mean, do you have monitoring in terms of their performance? I mean,
at the moment, nothing. There's nothing we can do. They're not performing at all. We do have a group of sports psychologists that have offered their services free of charge for all our athletes and top level athletes and coaches to use that service, which right now I think is really needed, because you're getting people that have been home for 4 months where they wouldn't have been home at all. They would have been on the European season, and suddenly they're at home with their kids, homeschooling, which they probably never had to do before. Something new for me. I'm learning again. It's quite difficult, but yeah, it's really tough. I was speaking to the head of our swimming Coaching Federation, Graham Hill. And it's the first time in 25 years he's been home over this period. So it's we're really going through crazy times, but at least together with the War Room and with the membership, we have now managed to unlock return to training based on certain protocols. The problem is a lot of the people train in gyms, and gyms aren't allowed to open. So now your sort of private clubs, your high performance centers are the ones that are going to have to help, and it's going to be teamwork. So we may not have money to pay, but at least they should be offering their facilities free of charge to the top level athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's interesting times. I mean, I think, Andrew, you were saying as well to me the other day, in terms of first time for over 20 years that you actually spend so much time in one place, I think, you know. So it's a different time. It's a different time. I'm pretty surprised that we've not had a daughter, a son, or somebody walk in and scream at us during this period, which I know I've had on many occasions with the various different meetings we've had over the course of the weeks. Thanks a lot for that, Leon. Hazel, I'd just like to bring you into the discussion. I mean, the situation in Zambia is similar. What's the situation you're facing there currently?
I think similar to what Leon is saying, the biggest problem is returning to play and training. This is the problem that we're facing, because from the monitoring point of view, there's not much we're doing to actually monitor. Although we do have quite a strong medical commission that's trying to keep in touch with all the qualified athletes for the games and trying to make sure that they are keeping well, etc. But a lot of the sport, and especially like for boxing, they need to spar, they need to participate, they need to get in touch with the next guy, and this is not happening. And we have 2 boxers that are in the barracks, so we are being communicated by the barracks that they actually are training, but we don't have any real evidence to show what they're doing or what standard they're at. And our challenge right now is to get the federations to have some sort of liaisons directly with them whilst they're on lockdown, and see what the fitness levels are and what is possible. In Zambia, perhaps not as bad as what Leon is saying in South Africa, where they seem to have extremely strict lockdown. We have a lockdown, but at the same time, dare I say, it's not really a lockdown in terms of what's happening around us. But for the sports, yes, a lot of all the facilities have closed. The gyms, fortunately, will open on the 1st of July. So there's that opportunity now opening up for us. And we have been encouraging them to do things like road runs and trying to keep fit at home. But it's really not very feasible or even practical from the point of view of the athletes that we have. And they're really not able to afford to do much more than perhaps a road run or get together with a mate and do something with a mate. So we sort of have this challenge. I know our president has been quite active. He's personally gone round to visit them and to see what he can do. So we've been trying to mitigate the aspect of the feeding. On that side, I'm quite happy to report that the government's actually come on board, and through our podium performance committee, which is based at the OIDC, a feeding program is being put in support for them through the government and through the OIDC, which has just opened up, although not very active in terms of competition. So we're hoping that once the lodgings are opened up at the OIDC, we'll be able to actually monitor them directly and have them brought to the OIDC. But this has been the challenge. We don't know exactly where we are and exactly what their performances are. For athletics, it's a bit different because they've continued to train, although they're training in isolation at our Heroes Stadium, which is closed, but they're actually using it. So we're hoping that they seem to be managing their training aspect. But until we sort of get the physical and in touch with everybody, and our technical people are actually able to have direct communication, it's a bit difficult. So we're just looking at the longer aspects in terms of once this lockdown comes to pass, what are we going to do to support them up until Tokyo? And we think as much as that's an opportunity for training and improving, it's also a challenge in terms of the finances. So it was nice to hear what Azira is saying, and I'm aware that Anoka's trying to do something, but it's limited in terms of our collective team, and it's specific to certain athletes. It was also nice to know that Anoka has come on board, but like she said, it'll depend on our applications and how we're going to manage those funds. Right now, we're making do with our own funds, with solidarity funds. We're in communication with solidarity, and we're trying to spread our funds as much as we can. But it will be a bit of a challenge between now and the games. And we try to be positive, I think, and hoping that they will improve. For those that are talking about times and speeds, improve. For others, we're hoping we'll be able to get some competition in, depending on the funding.
Yeah. Okay. I think, I think, it's a difficult situation. I think the finances is obviously one that is difficult for everybody, whether it comes from the government or obviously attracting sponsors. Obviously, we know a lot of businesses are not doing too well at this time.
Right now, yeah. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, Andrew, if I can just come back to you on one point. I mean, I think obviously in light of this crisis, I think that whether it be an NPC or an NOC needs to attract more sponsorship or attract sponsorship in this following this crisis. I mean, what advice would you give to the NOCs and NPCs there about how to maybe add value to their proposition to a potential sponsor, to looking at those, trying to secure those additional funds, to support the teams on the road to Tokyo and I guess and beyond?
I think two things, Jan. One is explore the digital assets that they have and try to be digital in this current environment. I know it's challenging because it's a trend that was already there, but with the COVID-19, it has accelerated. But of course, it demands some investment. But I think it's an important thing to have in mind because at the moment, it's something that it's a growing trend. The world of sport is growing toward that direction, and it's something that you can, with the right, you can have it in a very sophisticated level, but you can also do something way more simple and still be able to generate some income, some revenue out of it, whether it's broadcasting your own events, competition. Of course, at the moment, it's very difficult to do so, but whoever has archives or whoever has, it depends a lot on the situation of every member, but digital, the world is going through a digital transformation that has been accelerated because of the COVID-19. If you see some of the leagues, they are just in their best moment commercially, if you think on esports and things like that. But of course, it's not our reality. And another word is purpose. I do believe, and maybe you call me I'm optimistic, but I do believe that the world will emerge different from COVID-19. Not every individual on earth, but I think we will emerge differently, and things that used to matter in the past will no longer matter, or the other way around. So how do you reposition your sport organization and try to position sport? And this is something we have been discussing a lot in the IPC, but also in the IOC circle, is how we can position sport on the post-pandemic world. How relevant should sport be when we have all this crisis behind us? And this is something we can all do at a national level, for example, how we position sport, how important sport will be in the return to play, or as Leon has mentioned, the return to train, or the return to some kind of normality. So I think, you need to be creative at this moment in time, but I do think that purpose So, and when it comes to our world, let's say the Paralympic world, I think that is an obvious a component that when it comes to purpose, but it's no different. The Olympic world is different, but also has a lot of social impact and digital. And digital, sometimes you can do interesting things with not huge, big amount of money, but because you don't want, and you can do it in different levels. Of course, the Premier League in UK is doing some, in England is doing one thing at this level. The National Paralympic Committee of X country in Africa can do it at a much lower level, but investment is much lower as well. And maybe you can monetize it and do some, can raise some revenues in this difficult time. But you need creativity to explore this. But again, as I have said, this is where the world of sport is going. And if you can take the opportunity to embark in that trend early on, it will be beneficial to all of our stakeholders at a national, international level.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, it is the NOCs, the NPCs, have to really, they're not able to adapt to the new world of technology. I mean, it's great. Obviously, these types of web forums that allow us to communicate. And I think, but it's to look at your how important nowadays, I think your social media profile is, Africa, especially, Facebook, the various different social media platforms is a means not only to increase the distance that your message can go, but it's obviously for potential sponsors. It's it allows you to have a value, so whether it be numbers of followers or these are values that I think now are very important to sponsors. I mean, it was for us when we did the African Beach Games. We focused on a digital strategy to really have a big social media presence. And like you said, it doesn't really need that much investment. It's amazing what you can do now with just your mobile phone. We don't need a big broadcasting setup here, and I think where you've got athletes where okay, they might not be present with you, but you can get them to do small videos, to create interaction with the public, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people sat at home with more time than, let's say, that they would have had before, scrolling through the various different things on their phones. And now's the opportunity to try and catch that captive audience, I think. So it's yeah.
And Jan, allow me to say that sometimes things like this sounds impossible, but I would like to remind whoever is watching this that in the year 2000, the IPC broadcasted more than 100 hours of the Paralympics in Sydney through live streaming, which at the time was something absolutely challenging and difficult. The broadband that we have at home right now, and they're so ordinary to us, we take it for granted. At that time, it was impossible. So I know it sounds like, oh, come on, I struggle to survive. How can I have a digital strategy? But technology is there to help us and find creative ways. So if we were able to broadcast 100 hours of Sydney Games through live streaming, I think, with the technology available today, if we are creative, we can find ways to increase our revenue streams. Absolutely.
I think that's, it's an important message for everybody, to take on board. Because we have to be creative in finding solutions to the challenges that we face. Obviously, just moving on to a different topic. Obviously, the main topic is on the road to Tokyo, and obviously we're very happy to have with us João from Tokyo2020, and obviously it's pretty late in the day or probably early in the morning. I'm not quite sure yet, but yeah, I guess what I'd like to just bring in, obviously, to Tokyo, and one thing that obviously is, in my experience, having worked for the NOC and NPC relations teams for the last 2 games, is, I mean, what message do you think, João, is really important for you to get across to the NOCs and NPCs at the moment?
Hey, first of all, thank you, Jan, thank you, Mustafa, for inviting us to participate of this event. Yeah, it's as all NOCs and NPCs are aware, we have one NOC and one NPC relations dedicated to each NOCs to act as a point of contact by phone, by WhatsApp, by email, and touch bases in what you mentioned in the beginning of the session. It's the contact. We are here to support in anything that we need. We know it's been a busy few months since the games were postponed, and we are ready to discuss with NOCs and NPCs any topics in individual circumstances that potentially your NOC or NPC are facing. Since the middle of June, we started hosting the one-on-one with NOCs and NPCs, and we had the opportunity to discuss some relevant updates and answer questions that it's naturally that was brought up. The feedback of those meetings will also gonna help us to improve the communications with NOCs and NPCs in the coming months, and particularly the venues and the services levels that needs to be reconfirmed in the coming months. And as you mentioned at the beginning, and Andrew Parsons also mentioned, we are working very close with IOC, IPC, the Japanese government to make sure everything will take place normally, and also from again touch base in the communication and improving and use the technology as a positive asset for us. In October, we are going to be hosting the Chef de Mission webinar for NOCs and NPCs, and I think it would be a really good opportunity for us to receive to share the latest updates and have further one-on-one meetings with NOCs and NPCs with a little bit more of a technical approach with sport entries and accreditation and potentially Olympic and Paralympic villages with the NOCs.
Okay, I did just. Can I get a thumbs up? Was everybody able to hear João? I got a few messages. Yeah, I think it may just a thumbs up from Ezra. Nice. Okay, well, thanks a lot for that, João. I think that, you know, and again, I think it's an important message that we reiterate to all. I mean, is that, you know, whilst we don't have all the information at this time, and information that we do have may well change, or, you know, depending on what happens over the course of the next few months, it's very important that the NOCs and NPCs are actively in contact as much as possible with their counterparts, whether it be at Tokyo, whether it be at the IPC, whether it be at the IOC, whether it be with ENOCA, because I mean, there will be a lot of information, no doubt, that will change. You know, it will be confirmed, reconfirmed, changed, and reconfirmed again. And I think that, you know, it's making sure that that we have we're aware of where those resources are, so that and you're there to help people at the end of the day, 24/7, if I remember rightly from the
exactly.
role, especially with the time difference in Tokyo.
Exactly.
I think that, you know, what I'd like to do now is if there are any questions that we've had come through, or if any of the speakers would like to bring up any other further points, please feel free to raise your hand, and I'll obviously take you off mute. Just bear with me 1 second. Hazel, are you able to hear us now? Hazel, can you hear me? No, I think we may have a slight technical problem. Okay. Emmanuel from Nigeria, are you with us? I can't see you on the video, but maybe I can you hear? Oh.
Hello, Jan.
Hey, Emmanuel, how are you doing?
Fine. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well,
Okay.
and now I can see you, which is even better.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to Mustafa and his team. Actually, the challenges of COVID-19 and the postponed Olympic Games cuts across the nations, and it depends on where you're looking at it. So, but one thing I know is that this postponement of the Olympic Games holds a lot of some kind of advantage, especially in kind of time buying to meet deadlines, to be able to catch up with timelines, and also to be able to, meet up with training. Some athletes, for instance, during this COVID-19, there are challenges, and the major challenges that the COVID and the postponed Olympic Games has brought is that training, is a great challenge. It's a great problem for athletes, especially for team sports. Teams can no longer train together, and some athletes don't have access to their coaches. Actually, also, the facilities, for instance, here we have still have the facilities shut down. And so some sports you can have your training in isolation, but in other sports you need some facilities for effective training. So COVID has posed a lot of challenges with training, and also brought some emotional challenges also to the athletes themselves. But like I said, the postponement has something in store for us to, like in terms of communication, we now realize that we can use more of the online communication system, which is great saving on costs of travels, and saves a lot. And for us in the NOC here, another challenge is in the area of funding, because presently we have some partnership fundings expected, which are on hold right now. And for us, we need to extend support to national federations to ensure that their programs still keep running. But like I said, things maybe appear different, after the lockdown, depending on, how things turn out. But quite frankly, I believe that it will be a new kind of order.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's like we said. I think it's good that you're taking advantage of this kind of crisis to learn new ways to communicate. Obviously, Nigeria, with such a large population, such a large country, I mean, it must be very difficult to coordinate. Obviously, all the athletes in the different states. And I think, like I said, it's gives us an opportunity to reflect, that maybe we don't have normally in the very hectic world of sports, and to use this time to learn new techniques and learn new skills, basically, and as I said, probably exit this very differently to how we entered it. I just want to I've got hands raised here from Leon, but Leon, I'm just going to pass over to Ezra, just in terms of the ANOCA side of things, and I'll come back to you in just a second. Hi, Ezra.
Hi, thank you, Jan. One of the few things that I want to add is we've been having consultative meetings with different groups. I mean, as part of the communication, where, even before it was a challenge, but because of COVID-19, it's now becoming an opportunity even for the future, where people who were afraid of using technology, who believed that we need to basically have to come together to have meetings, are now using technology, because we've been having various webinars and meetings via online platforms. And one of the things that are coming out from there also is that the money that would have been used to those meetings, flying people in, accommodating people, will now go towards supporting athletes. So those are some of the ways we are actually looking at as ANOCA, to actually make sure that with the savings that are there, the finance department will then advise us towards the end of the year in terms of how much additional savings were made, so that then we're able to assist athletes and obviously other activities of ANOCA. But the one key thing that came from the meeting we had with athletes and the Athletes Commission, and we had few athletes commissions from across the continent joining, was that we should not forget that we have athletes, African athletes that are based overseas, and they're still basically stuck overseas, that whatever support that we give, we also need to consider that we have those athletes that also have those challenges because they are away from home, and we need to be ensuring that there's still that contact. The issue of mental skills training and mental support or psychology has come up very, very strongly from most of the athletes, that support needs to be given. And that is something we believe the NOCs will also prioritize to ensure that athletes are able to have different coping strategies and mechanisms coming out of COVID-19 and during COVID-19, and also the fear going forward, because one of the things which are a challenge and will be an opportunity, I think, for NOCs is when they are readjusting their plans, is to say, are we going to, how are we traveling to the games, for instance? So those are the things that were coming up. But then not all NOCs will be able to charter planes. So that's a major challenge, which I think with the collaboration that has been coming up as a key thing, we need to look at in terms of how do we then ensure that the screening that needs to take place actually then covers that particular aspect, which then brings another element around the appointment of medical teams, because that is something now that needs to be relooked in terms of ensuring that all the medical teams that are appointed are able to actually deal with issues around COVID-19 in terms of ensuring the safety of athletes. And also one of the key things that came up was that most of the athletes who actually were depending on the different events to actually get income, like the marathons around the world, are now not getting any income. And we've had different governments like Kenya, I think South Africa, and a few who are actually now giving some palliatives or relief grants to those athletes to be able to survive because they have lost the income that they usually get from those competitions. Also, the key challenge for Africa, or most of the countries rather, will be that most governments right now are going to look at, even though sport, already we had to try and make a case for sport, but now it's even going to be more of a challenge where we need to be now saying, with all the competing priorities, health being one, you have housing, the issues of unemployment are coming up more and more. So most governments will be worrying about that. So how do we as sport reposition ourselves to actually ensure and make a case that we are relevant, we are important, and we can play a much, much bigger role in terms of ensuring that we are supporting everyone. And also in terms of the key thing that we believe also needs to be done is to actually work with everyone, like the governments, we're talking the NOCs and the NPCs, but also you also have NGOs who are working within that platform. So let's bring everyone together to actually pull all the resources together so that then you avoid duplications. You are able to streamline all the sources of funding to actually make sure that the funding goes to the people that need it the most. Thank you.
Absolutely, I think that's an excellent point. And Leon, I don't know if your point is on the same subject, but if you want to, can you hear me now? Yeah, there we go.
Cool, thanks very much. Another thing, first of all, I just wanted to reiterate what Izera said now, that the mental skills and the psychology is really important. And we have Dr. Debbie Alexander that's on our board and also on the RPC board, that is a counseling psychologist, and Izera will know how she's been pushing it. And this is a situation that's really come up, and I implore all other NOCs and NPCs to really bring expertise like that onto your NOCs and NPCs to be able to assist your athletes and coaches. It's not just the athletes that need help. But just to give you some more background, is we have a high performance commission made up of certain experts that help us and looking at the preparation for Tokyo. So remember now, 3 months of preparation have gone out the window, and we're going to have to come up with innovative, out-of-box thinking to make sure that when the athlete gets on the starting line in Tokyo next year, that they're as prepared they would have been this year. So it's something that we have to think of. We have to consult with the experts, with the coaches, with the athletes, with the sports scientists, and really make sure that we get our ducks in a row as an NOC and NPC to ensure whatever we envisaged and success we thought we would have this year, at the very least, or if not better, we'll have it next year. it's a level playing field because just about everybody got the same problem, but you still want to make sure that when the athlete gets on that line, they are 100% ready for that race, whatever it is. That's really important. The return to training that we keep on speaking about, a lot of our federations have been sort of asking us, what you're doing, and they keep on forgetting the lockdown wasn't implemented by us. The lockdown was implemented by government, and we can only follow our government going forward. We can't undo the lockdown. However, we can have all our ducks in a row that when the lockdown ends, we're ready to continue. So the thing for the information to go out there is make sure you're ready to return to training and return to play when your government lifts your lockdown, but not at the expense of the athlete and the athlete's safety and well-being. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leon. I have a few questions that have come through on the Facebook group. There's a Leonardo from Cape Verde, which I probably don't understand who that is, I think. So I think this is a general point. So what the question is what do our guests think about the opportunity of having Tokyo2020, the hope for humanity and unity or post-pandemic? Sorry, work out. Bear with me one second. What do you think is the biggest opportunity for the Olympic and Paralympic movements as a result of this crisis? Andrew, I mean, maybe do you think that maybe I can ask you to pass a comment on this or raise your up? Leon's raising his hand as well.
Ian, can you repeat because I missed the question?
Yeah,
the audio was oscillating a lot. So.
We have a question come through, which is what is the biggest opportunity for the Olympic and Paralympic movement as a result of this as a result of this crisis, and how can it, in a post sort of pandemic era, how can the games be a sort of a light of hope for humanity?
Well, I think, and I have touched on this, and I think also Ezra, she also touched on that. It's how the world is for reposition itself and become more relevant than it used to be, or at least it becomes more evident how important sport is. Not only big sport events, but even physical activity on a day-to-day, all the different layers of sport. I think, and that's just. But I think for that, we need a united approach. And this is something that I think I have been speaking with the IOC about it, is how we can then, in not meetings, because we're not meeting the calls with the members, how we can, not take advantage is not the right word, but how can we best position sport as something that it's absolutely fundamental in the building of this new normal or the post-pandemic world. I think this is an opportunity that we have at the world of sport, and we needed to really think carefully about it and plan it, not only at an international level, IOC, APC level, but even in a national level. Even when speaking with our national government or regional governments or province governments, I think it's important that position sport that way. And the games, yeah, boy, I'm absolutely sure that the games in Tokyo, if they go ahead as planned, they will be, the symbol that we have left this whole COVID-19 crisis behind us. So yes, I think it will be, IOC President Bach is referring to it as a beacon. We say it's a symbol, but I think it will be the moment that we will look and say, look, humankind has faced it, and we have, won this challenge. That is one of the first challenges ever to really threaten us as humankind, and not as nation to nation or groups of nations or parts of the world. Is threatening the humankind, and as humankind we needed to react.
Leon, I'll come to you in just 1 second. I think Dr. Hayat, did you want to make a point? I mean, I can come back to Dr. Hayat. Leon, do you want to bring on your point now? Okay. The thumbs up was there from before, I guess.
International competition, so you whatever the level of performance.
Dr. Hayat, are you with us?
This might, this may have some consequences or on the zone.
Sorry, I'm confused to who was speaking right there. Okay, one other question that's come through maybe for João in Tokyo. A question came through on Facebook. I mean, within the organizing committee, I mean, pre and currently, I mean, what actions have the organizing committee taken within, in terms of how's working been, like for somebody at the organizing committee for Tokyo 2020 over the last sort of 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, basically the same as most of our colleagues here tonight. We have been following the Japan government procedures and everything that to comply with the social distancing, and we are lucky that we are being able to work from home since the end of March. So we are lucky to have this flexibility to be working from home, and each team has been going in a type of different assignments, different days, with not sitting in front of each other. It's basically the new normal that has been exactly
the real new norm. Okay, well, thank you. I think Dr. Hayat is back with us, so I'm going to bring her, bring her into the conversation.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. What I wanted to make clear to you that regarding what my sister has said about the psychological point is that we just appointed a psychiatrist to be able to let our players go back to we're not going to say normal, because of course the COVID-19 will not have changed the whole world, as our president said. So we want them to feel that we understand what changes are going to be. And also I would like to add that of course most of the people were affected economically, and this insecurity feeling has caused some of our players not to be very happy about coming back, and now they're going to leave their children. And so we have appointed the psychiatrist, and this is what I wanted to make clear. And I wanted you people to understand our experience, and that we are trying as much as we can to solve or to face the challenges that we are facing. And also I wanted to say big hello to our president, that I didn't say hello to him at the beginning.
Thanks. Dr. Hayat, well, I've got you on here. I mean, we have a question, I think, that came through on the Facebook group, I think, in respect to Egypt. I mean, what level of government support is being provided to para-athletes from the government at this time?
Well, we are getting a moral support, and up to now we don't really need the financial support. But of course, the moral support we are getting is that they are trying to help us with the facilities that are going to be provided to the players, with the accommodation, with the all the sterilizers equipment that we need. They are ready, and actually when we had the meeting, we invited a person, a delegate from the government, from the Ministry of Sports, to be with us, and so that we can coordinate together. If the question is about the financial support, up to now, I don't think we need really financial support, but I'm sure that once we're going to need it, I am sure that we're going to find them with us, backing us in everything we are doing. Because as we see, as you know, Egypt is the focusing and is really acknowledging the importance of the Paralympic movement in Egypt. I hope this is satisfying the question.
I didn't pose the question, so I can't really answer that. But I think it was a very good answer from my perspective, and I hope the person who
I wanted to know the support of the government, and I'm very clear. I'm very transparent in what I have said.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Ezra, I think you have another point you'd like to bring.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. I think one of the opportunities, I think it was a question from Leonardo, is that as a sport movement, and in particular the international federations, the IPC, IOC, and the confederations in particular, is how do we then adapt the sports? Because that's what, when all the lockdowns happened throughout the world, a lot of sports were happening online. And I mean, certain countries were looking at esports and so forth. Maybe it's to say, how do we adapt the different sports where possible and feasible to actually be, can be played online? So that's another avenue that can be looked at going forward into the future. However, we understand that the complexities in terms of ensuring that you still bring that, the entertainment angle, the people coming to the stadium, the social cohesion element of sport that we shouldn't forget in terms of using that to actually, integrate different people into societies. However, the other thing that we need to look at that we shouldn't lose sight of is the young athletes, the juniors and the youth, in terms of how are they coping during this period? Because one of the things we've looked at as ANOCA is to say, while we are addressing the issues of Tokyo, we need to make sure that we don't lose sight or we don't drop the ball when it comes to preparing the teams for Dakar 2022. I mean, we'll be hosting for the first time in Africa, and also for Paris 2024. Thank you. And also, before I leave, Jan, sorry, is that one of the key things that the modifications that need to happen will be, what are the minimum standards in terms of safety? So those are some of the things that are going to possibly have to change, where the risk assessment, whatever used to be maybe medium risk, may end up now being a high risk. So those adjustments will need to happen, obviously, on a sport by sport basis, on a country by country basis, and also on an organization by organization basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Would any of do we have any other points from the other panelists that they would like to bring? Yes. Okay, I think that I think this is a great opportunity, and I think it's been a really fantastic meeting to bring the community together and promote the dialogue. To find ways, like I said, to obviously to overcome the various challenges that we had, and I hope that moving forward we can continue to promote dialogue, and especially whether it be regionally, whether it be your neighbor countries. So I think it's important that we do find ways to continue those discussions, and yeah, we're all facing similar problems, and so let's find common solutions to those problems. Obviously, I'd like to say a very big thank you to everybody that's been involved with this. What I think I'll pass over to Mustafa now to give us the sort of the closing session. And again, I thank you very much for your participation today. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future in person, but obviously probably for the time being virtually. So thank you again, and I'll pass over to Mustafa.
Oh, thank you very much, Jan, and thank you for all of you guys for being here. And I'm not surprised by the enthusiasm that the speakers have shown in sharing their experience and knowledge. And this made this web conferences a success that has again surprised our expectation. And as far as I'm concerned, I think this is this kind of type of support and collaboration that the African new generation need today. So to be able to participate in the development of the African Olympic and Paralympic movement, and even represent them with integrity in the international level. So the speaker and participant of this panel put a step forward today by accepting to join and support this initiative, and have shown together we are stronger than ever. And I would like to warmly thank all the speakers and participants for being part of these web conferences, particularly Mr. Parson, President of the IPC, Dr. Hayat from Egypt, Mr. Rodrigo from Cabo Verde, Mrs. Hezra from Anoka, South Africa, Mr. Leon from South Africa, Mrs. Hazels from Zambia, Mr. Emmanuel from Nigeria, and Joao from Tokyo 2020. And I won't finish my speech without thanking the SUREMS teams and those who have been helping in this project since day one. So I'm going to start with our technicians, Francis, and Giovanni, Ana Paola, Eloise, Gabriel from Tokyo, Lenny Abi, and the Tokyo team also, Gavin and Fabio, Dan Wood from the WFA, and also, really good thanks to Jan Cravens, who's the person today that he was the first person who told me to go ahead with this project. And thank you very much once again. Take care and stay safe.